Good morning, guys. What is going on? Today I'm here, as you can see, with my F10 M5. What we're going to work on today is I'm going to try and lower it a little bit. Today what I'm going to use to do that is right here. This is the Megan and Swift Spring height adjustable lowering kit. It's a coilover sleeve setup, so that way you retain the factory EDC electronic shocks that are in the car. Let's see. I'm not going to do a real in-depth install on it, but I'll just give some quick overviews and pointers as I'm going along. As you can see, basically it's just like coil springs, just as if you were going to install some lowering springs. But it comes with these little perches because the factory ones are pressed on to the struts, and basically you remove those ones off the factory strut bodies and you press these adjustable ones that have a threaded collar on them, just as an all-inclusive aftermarket coilover would have, and that basically turns your electronic strut into slightly adjustable coilover. It obviously doesn't have as much height range and things like that as an aftermarket coilover would, but this kit's supposed to give you about 1.25 inches, give or take, of adjustability. These are for the rears over here. They have helper springs because their rears have a lot more travel. That's supposed to help the spring from getting unseated in the rear. But yeah, I had, doing my research, I hadn't found anybody that had used this kit yet. I don't know how long they've actually used this, but or they've actually made this, should I say. But what really sold me was having used Swift springs in their kit. Because I have used Swift springs before, and they're known for being a really good riding spring as far as aftermarkets go. And also Swifts are really known for being true to their spring rate rating. So I know it's a very high quality type spring, and yeah, seems like a good quality package. So I wanted to give it a try on this car here, see what the results are. Alrighty, for the front struts here, it's a double wishbone type on this car. So it actually shouldn't be that hard to get out. We're just going to undo that ball joint from the upper control arm here. Of course, the upper 3 strut mount bolts will come out. And then just that little saddle right there, we'll unbolt that from that lower control arm there. And it looks like, if we're lucky, we're gonna have enough room to just pop that strut off towards the rear of the car here and let that knuckle hang a little bit, and we should have clearance. That would be absolutely awesome. For the rear of the car, I'm hoping that once I undo this strut mounting bolt down here, that this rear knuckle will have a little bit of droop to it, so that way once I undo the strut from inside the car, hopefully I won't have to take off any of these lateral links in the back in order to get clearance to swing that strut out. But at least the mounting point on the knuckle is actually pretty high up. It's not all the way down at the bottom like I know my E39, the strut was pretty buried when I had to pull it out. So either way, it shouldn't be that hard, but I know I'm totally jinxing myself by saying that, but we are gonna find out right now. Alright, well you can tell now that that didn't go how I was hoping. I had to disconnect both of those links. That one right there in order to allow the spindle to rotate forward so I could get that ball joint off of that one. I had to remove the rear caliper and everything because it's attached, or you have to move it to get that ball joint out. Yeah. Awesome. One thing that I'm very grateful to find that they did on the F10 chassis cars, as opposed to previous models, has to do with how you access the rear struts when you're having to take those out for any reason. I know, like in my E39, this whole rear parcel shelf, as well as my E39 doesn't have fold down seats, so in order to do the struts on the E39, you have to remove the bottom seat cushion, then you'd have to remove the rear seat cushion, then you'd have to remove the headrest brackets and the parcel shelf, and then remove the speaker pods, and then be able to access the sound deadening caps where you would get to the bolts for the struts. What they did here on the F10 is they made it so the speaker grill there, you can just pop out from the parcel shelf by itself, and then you just unscrew the speaker. And then underneath down there, my foam's kind of popped back around, but you can kind of see down there, the strut bolts are semi-easy to access now without having to disassemble the whole car, which I can only imagine would be a nightmare. I think in the E60, they actually changed from having the bolts up in the deck for a little while, and I think in the E60 you access the rear strut mount bolts from inside the trunk, as you would find on a lot of other cars like Japanese cars, and for whatever reason they switched back to having them up further in the pillar here for the F10. But yeah, regardless, it's a lot easier that they made it so it was modular, so you only had to remove 2 parts in order to get to that. It was a lot better thought out, and I definitely appreciate that of them. Alright, this is our rear strut right here. This is the factory spring seat. That's a press fit right onto this step right here of the strut. It's kind of smaller than the bottom body. So this is press fit from the factory, so you have to oil it and let it sit, and then heat it up a little bit with a torch gently around the edges, but make sure not to get the strut body too hot as to not boil the oil out of the seal. And you have to hammer it around the edges until you can pop it off. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes to do. This is the new one. It's also a press fit. It goes lower down over this larger step of the shock body. Then it has a little groove in there to make sure it doesn't fall all the way down. That's also press fit, so I'm going to have to use the press right here and a couple attachments to get that seated. Alrighty, here's a front strut. Pretty much the same thing. I already just have this one sitting on there. It's stepped just like the rears are. See if it'll focus. Yeah, it's got a little taper there, so once again we're going to press it on there. Only difference is the sway bar end links are attached to these. So as you can see, they have kind of like a offset over to one side, and the new ones have an offset too. This one's a little more over to the right, the other one's over to the left. So when you press these ones off, you want to mark, kind of wiped it off there because I was cleaning the body, but you kind of want to mark where the sway bar end link position was in relation to the strut, because this one you can't swivel obviously because it has a straight through bolt like that, so you want to make sure you get this in the same spot so you can reattach the sway bar end link. But yeah, otherwise it's the same. Alright guys, so I'm done with the coilover sleeve install now. Sorry it's a little windy. Hopefully it's not keeping you from hearing me talk or anything. But yeah, I'll be honest, that it wasn't the worst suspension install ever on a BMW that I've done, but it was quite the headache. The fronts were actually not bad at all, but the rears, they were a lot worse than they at first seemed to be. So all in all, it probably took about 6 hours. I mean, it's my first time really doing suspension stuff on an F10, so if you look on the first corner, it was a little bit of experimenting, but it worked out. Right now, I just took it for a drive. I drove from my shop almost to my house to give it a little bit of settle time. I'm sure it's going to settle a little more over the next few days, but I have all of the springs on the lowest settings right now. The rear definitely is lower than the front. I'm waiting on some different wheels right now, so that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get the springs on and get everything settled, so when I put the new wheels on that are going to be a lot more aggressive, I can see how they're going to fit in relation to the fenders. If need be, I would like if the whole thing could be as low as the back, but I don't think that's possible, so we'll see how the higher spring rate springs settle in the front, and if nothing else, I might have to raise the rear maybe 10 millimeters to kind of make it match a little better, but not bad. I'm pretty happy with it. In the comfort setting, it drives identical to stock. I mean, maybe the Sport Plus setting is a little bit stiffer than stock, but overall, I mean, especially for not being broken in, the Swifts drive with almost the same dynamics as it did before. So, yeah, I'm happy with it. I'll definitely check back and make some updates with it.